We are live, so yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Absolutely. We were live, Prabhu. We good to go.
Yep, sure. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Hare Krishna, Balaram Prabhu. Thanks for joining us. Prabhu is here for the second time in this year, and he's joining His Holiness Bhakti Anand Tirth Maharaj in Portland. And this morning, Prabhu is giving Bhagavatam lecture. As we all know, Prabhu joined sometime in the end of March, and Prabhu is currently serving as President of ISKCON San Diego. Thank you, Prabhu. This morning, Prabhu is giving Sunday Bhagavatam lecture. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So let's chant Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Thiravanachari Yamuna Thiravanachari Yamuna Thiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtadhara Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtadhara Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Mukund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the seven devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the seven devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the seven devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1 of the Creation, Chapter 14. The disappearance of Lord Krishna. Text 42. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, so Kachitva, excuse me, that's the wrong one. Oh, they're both kachit though. Okay, weather. Kachit, they're both kachit tvam. Okay, 41 and 42 both start the same. Kachit tvam nagamo gamyam vasat kritam striyam parajito vata bhavan notamar nasamai pati. Okay, kachit, weather, twam, yourself, na, not, agama, did contact, agamyam, impeachable, gamyam, acceptable, va, either, asat, kritam, improperly treated, striyam, a woman, parajitaha, defeated by, va, either, ata, after all, bhavan, your good self, na, nor, utamai, by superior power, na, not, asamai, by equals, pati, on the road. Translation: have you contacted a woman of impeachable character, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? Purport. It appears from this verse that during the time of the Pandavas, free contact between man and woman was allowed in certain conditions only. The higher caste men, namely the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, could accept a woman of the Vaishya or the Shudra community. But a man from the lower caste could not contact a woman of the higher caste. Even a Kshatriya could not contact a woman of the Brahmin caste. The wife of a Brahmin is considered one of the seven mothers, namely one's own mother, the wife of the spiritual master or teacher, the wife of a Brahmin, the wife of a king, the cow, the nurse, and the earth. Such contact between man and woman was known as Uttama and Adama. Contact of a Brahmin with a Kshatriya woman is Uttama. But the contact of a Kshatriya with a Brahmin woman is Adama and therefore condemned. A woman approaching a man for contact should never be refused. But at the same time, the discretion, as above mentioned, may also be considered. Bhima was approached by Hidimbi from a community lower than the Shudras, and Yayati refused to marry the daughter of Shukracharya because of Shukracharya's being a Brahmin. Vyasadeva, a Brahmin, was called to beget Pandu and Dhritarashtra. Satyavati belonged to a family of fishermen, but Parashara, a great Brahmin, begotten her Vyasadeva. So there are so many examples of contacts with women, but in all cases, the contacts were not abominable, nor were the results of such contacts bad. Contact between man and woman is natural, but that also must be carried out under regulative principles so that the social consecration may not be disturbed or unwanted worthless population be increased for the unrest of the world. It is abominable for a Kshatriya to be defeated by one who is inferior in strength or equal in strength. If one is defeated at all, he should be defeated by some superior power. Arjuna was defeated by Bhishma Dev, and Lord Krishna saved him from the danger. This was not an insult for Arjuna because Bhishma Dev was far superior to his, namely age, respect, and strength. But Karna was equal to Arjuna, and therefore Arjuna was in crisis when fighting with Karna. It was felt by Arjuna, and therefore Karna was killed even by crooked means. Such are the engagements of the Kshatriyas. And Maharaj Yudhishthira inquired from his brother whether anything undesirable happened on the way home from Dwarka. Om Ganativarandas Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshudhanmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kalijivachalam Pangam Gaitegirim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundanitarinam Vanchakalpadibhishta Kripa Sindhube Vichapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right, read the English again. Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who's inferior or equal to you? So this particular chapter is titled "The Disappearance of Lord Krishna," and so we can imagine what it's coming to the disappearance of Lord Krishna. But within this chapter, as we, those of you who read and those of you who are hearing this particular chapter, Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Arjuna why he is so discouraged or depressed or disheartened. Because Arjuna is the most powerful warrior, full of energy, full of strength, full of joy and devotion as the pure devotee of Krishna. But then when Yudhishthira Maharaj sees him, he sees he's completely destroyed in a sense, emotionally. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking, what's going on? What happened? What happened on the way home from Dwarka? So what type of news did you get? And we see that in our experience that we may be very energetic, or we may be very lively in a sense, or we may know someone like that, or know people like that. And if something terrible happens, or if something unfortunate happens, and there's a change in their face, there's a change in their voice, there's a change in their appearance, pretty much everything. Just like if somebody has a loved one, a father or mother or grandparents or brothers or sisters or friends or whoever, if one of those persons is to pass away that we're very close to, this is very depressing, discouraging. Sometimes people stop eating, people stop drinking. We have this in cases of people who have been married for a very long time. They've been married for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And then I remember my grandmother, I guess it's my great grandmother, my mother's father's mother. But she lived into her, I believe it was her 90s, and her husband lived, until he was about 100, a little more. He was in the newspaper. And, but when he passed away, she was just, she just couldn't live, practically speaking. She just fasted. She fasted until she passed away. You have such things also traditionally in a more intense way when the husband's body was being burned after the soul left the body, the husband's body is being burned. And women were so devoted to their husbands and attached that they would enter the fire because they were thinking, better I die by fire, better I let this body be burned by fire than live without my husband. So you could imagine that level of devotion, that level of attachment, very intense. I mean, fires, they say it's one of the most painful ways to go, by fire. Um, so, so in this way, we could see that it gives us an idea of the different, you could say, the dynamics happening between one individual and another. If someone is to leave, it's a great depression, and sometimes people never overcome that. So, but Yudhishthira Maharaj, he's not jumping to that conclusion. He's asking so many questions first, um, which are related in this particular chapter. And we're actually coming to the end of this chapter. It looks like with tomorrow, or yeah, probably tomorrow or the next day. And finally, he comes to that question, or is it that Krishna has left? Is it that Krishna has disappeared? So yeah, it's a very intense chapter, and it's a chapter in the Bhagavatam, which, interesting enough, comes in the first canto. The whole storyline, or the history line of the Bhagavatam, starts with Krishna's disappearance. It's a very interesting way to start a book. And then later it talks in detail more about that in the later cantos, the 11th canto. So, yeah, we'll hear more about that. And in the next chapter, we'll hear how after Krishna left, the Pandavas left. They just walked north, which means practically they walk to the Himalayas, and they just keep on walking and walking until they can't walk anymore, until they give up their bodies. So it's a very intense part of the Bhagavatam. And generally, devotees, they do not like to so much meditate on Krishna's disappearance. Like we have Janmashtami, Krishna's appearance, we're celebrating that, but there's no time where we're celebrating the disappearance of Krishna. It's very difficult. Something that generally devotees don't meditate much on. Same with the disappearance of the spiritual master. So yeah, those are some points. And the purport in detail is, of course, there's more details, but in some detail, Srila Prabhupada is discussing the different rules or the different regulations for mixing of caste or mixing of different types of people in society. How Kshatriyas can mix with certain people, but they can't mix with other people, and Brahmins can mix with certain people, but they can't mix with others, and so on. Some details are there, which for nowadays, we don't have to really worry about so much, due to the particular situation in the world. I mean, nowadays, sometimes you speak with people, and people are struggling to get married, to find anyone even close to what they're looking for, not in terms of physical looks or personality necessarily, but just basic stuff. Sometimes you talk with talk with, like recently, I talked to some man and young men, and they're thinking about getting married, and they're having a hard time. Indian man having a hard time even finding someone who's vegetarian or who can respect their particular, yeah, their views on that. So it's a very upside down time we're living in. But in principle, you have this idea of Adi Rasa. So Adi Rasa, that is the original rasa, or specifically the conjugal rasa between Srimati Radharani and Krishna. So, uh, so that is the original rasa, the conjugal rasa, the original pure love found in the spiritual world. And Srila Prabhupada, he was very careful in speaking about this publicly. Of course, this is all detailed in our scriptures, such as Chaitanya Charitamrita and many other books. And it is important, and it is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to reveal to the world. So it is something that we as practitioners are eventually meant to meditate on and understand after our heart is purified to some degree. And in relation to that Adi Rasa, which is the original pure love, we have the distortion in the material world, or as Srila Prabhupada would say, the perverted reflection or the distorted reflection, which comes out as attraction for a man attracted to a woman attracted to a man. This is the reflection of the Adi Rasa. Of course, there is gross attachment, gross involvement between the sexes, opposite sexes. But then there's the more subtle things, subtle attachments. It's not such a gross thing, it's more of a subtle thing. And interesting enough is that the scripture understanding the soul's predicament in this world, or the soul having so many desires in this world, it allows for such things in a legal or a licit way, a regulated way. It allows for this combination between man and woman. And unlike, for example, to be successful in certain traditions, you have to just pretty much take sannyas, just like renounce it all. But in the Bhakti tradition, Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, it is understood that one can be a householder and be successful, and be very Krishna conscious. When we have so many examples, so many of our Mahajans, our great teachers in scripture, were householders, and so many of our acharyas and devotees in the present day, so many wonderful devotees. So Krishna understanding this and our scripture allowing for this is good. And that being said, there's the system of varnashrama dharma. So you have brahmacharya, student life, and you have grihastha, household life, vanaprastha, retired, and sannyas is full renunciation. So interesting enough is that the whole varnashram system is actually designed and geared, and Srila Prabhupada would mention this many times, to gradually remove us from this particular, attraction, this distorted reflection of the Adi Ras between man and woman. Because as living entities, we have to be attached. So we're attached to our wife, we're attached to our husband, we're attached to our children, we're attached to our house, we're attached to our career, we're attached to our bodies. And if one doesn't have a wife or a house or a career or anything, they're attached to other things, like the typical attachment that may be found in somebody who doesn't have these things is maybe they're attached to their position, their social position, or their respect, which has been a downfall in religious or spiritual groups throughout time. You have people, the Brahmins or the sannyasis or whoever, they might not be involved in these other things, but they may be attached to their respect or their position or misidentification with their position, for example. So, um, but it is interesting that the whole varnashram system, it allows for the mixing of men and women in a religious way in the grihastha ashram, but it is pointing to detachment. And it is helping us to become gradually free. Now, on the opposite side, you have a whole civilization, means the modern civilization, or as Srila Prabhupada would say, a so-called civilization. That is exactly the opposite. It is based on, there's no sense of getting free from gross or subtle, the gross or subtle attraction between men or women or any other type of material attachments. There's no sense like that. But it's the opposite, that just stoke the fire, keep on going, be attached as long as humanly possible. And Srila Prabhupada would in a specifically, he would sometimes be critical of elderly men, not being able to control their senses and just being in a very, could say, lusty or in a kind of a gross way. So you have the traditional civilization, which is based on becoming free gradually from material attachments. And what does that mean to become free? It means to become completely attached to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through loving devotional service. And then you have a whole other civilization that is based on just fulfill all your material desires in any way, shape, or form you want, licitly, illicitly, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's no morality anyways. What does it matter? And there's no sense of at any point in time whatsoever of getting free from those attachments, or that they're bad or not good for us. So this is the civilization of today, practically speaking. There's some pockets of sanity around still, but practically speaking, that's what's being pushed mainstream. So it is understood that most people will live as grihastas, which is fine. Srila Prabhupada was a grihasta. He lived like that, or you could say he lived in that ashram. And again, many other devotees did that. But although that is fine, there's the gradual moving towards more full direct Krishna consciousness, or you could say, which also means detachment. Now, it doesn't mean that all men are are meant to take sannyas. That's not absolutely necessary. I was in Bay Area recently, and this devotee, I was at his house, and he had a harmonium there. It was a very nice harmonium, and it's probably about $2,500, at least in America. And even in India, it's about $1,000, which is a lot in a sense, of course. Relatively speaking, it's not that much, money, but I was playing this devotee's harmonium at his house, and he said, "Do you want this harmonium?" And then I was a little embarrassed. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't want to take your harmonium. I mean, it's a very nice harmonium. It's like custom made and very beautiful harmonium. And then he insisted a few times, and I was joking with him and his wife, and I was saying, "Wow, you're like practically ready to take sannyas." Just giving a just joking. It's a lot more than that, but um, so it's not necessary that all men take sannyas, um, but at least uh, there is an emphasis on vanaprastha ashram, which means retiring from active work for money, which of course nowadays you bring that up, and I also brought that up in Bay Area, one devotee, because I asked this devotee, I said, "Are you retired?" And he said, "There's no retirement in Bay Area. You have to work hard. If you want to retire, you have to move to wherever, this place, that place, cheaper living type of place." Um, so sometimes you talk about retirement, people think it's impossible or something, but the principle there is there that there is a time to work, there's a time to raise family, there's a time to engage in different activities like this, and then there's a time to I don't say wind down, but there's a time to retire from these types of engagements and just fully, with all of one's time, all of one's energy, try their best to serve Krishna and Srila Prabhupada in different ways. And that's the idea of the Vanaprastha ashram. And there's so much to do. It's amazing. I don't know how many people are in Portland. Does anyone know how many people are in Portland? You could unmute.
It's probably more about 1 million in the metro Portland area.
Okay, about 1 million. Yeah, so there's so many people in Portland, and that's just one city in America. There's so many cities. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, he predicted at every town and village his name would be heard, which practically that means that preachers or devotees will spread his name in all of these places. So there's so much to do. There's so many people to help in Krishna consciousness to try to introduce people. And there's so much to learn and study. And also you have like deity worship. Deity worship's unlimited. Book distribution's unlimited. So many things are unlimited. So we should try to make some plans to in that way. So yes, again, we're hearing of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He's asking, have you contacted a woman of impeachable character, or have you not been properly treated, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman, or have you been defeated on the way home by someone who's inferior or equal to you? So, and then tomorrow we will hear last question practically that Yudhishthira Maharaj asked, that, or is it that Krishna has disappeared? So, all right, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Balaram Prabhuji, for taking this on and speaking on this verse, in spite of your very busy schedule. Do devotees want to have comments, reflections, questions? Please share.
Hare Krishna Balaram Prabhu. Thank you for a nice lecture. And you mentioned about very beautiful points, especially about the level of devotion of a wife and the various inquiries what Yudhishthira is making in the series of last couple of verses. I'm just thinking on those lines. Here, Arjuna's character is being questioned, right? I mean, especially this particular verse, and talks about women of and higher or lower caste to assess his purity, right? I mean, and throughout Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we can take a lot of learnings from Arjun, right? Arjuna. I mean, in this material world, how can we assess our thoughts and actions to ensure, I mean, ultimately we are on the path of bhakti. I mean, whatever thoughts or actions comes to our mind, how can we ensure that are aligned with our spiritual goals? I mean, it can be a thought or an action. I mean, a thought can turn into an action that can lead to a good or bad. But our mind is full of thoughts and actions. The other day I was reading, a mind can be a monkey, but we can't be a monkey. I mean, so our thoughts, like, I mean, enormous. I mean, ultimately, how can we ensure that whatever thoughts and actions, even if a thought comes at times, it might be bad, but that might feel me. I mean, like I can feel guilty about like that thought. So the constant thoughts and actions, whatever come to my mind, right? How can we assess and make sure that they align with our spiritual goals?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I remember I was speaking with one devotee in San Diego, and yeah, he's of, yeah, you could say Indian background, but materially speaking. But anyways, he has a could say a hobby, and that hobby is he plays cricket. So with a bunch of other people. Um, so he was mentioning to me that anyways, in the conversation first he said that yeah, sometimes I have like these kind of bad thoughts or evil thoughts, and then you hear all types of things sometimes. I mean, you travel around and kind of people they they reveal their minds to you, and sometimes you're quite surprised, or it can be difficult, hearing what people tell you. Um, so I was thinking, okay, what is this person going to tell me? Because you never know. The different problems people deal with and their thought processes and everything. So then he said, yeah, sometimes I feel really bad because I I am wishing the worst on some other team players. And then he said that, like, for example, the opposite team, he said, I wish everybody well, but there's one guy, and he's like a real mean guy and real rude guy and real arrogant guy. So I don't wish him well. I wish him the worst. So, in comparison to all the things I've heard over the years from people about their problems and their thought processes and everything, this was relatively pretty innocent. So there's different levels. There's different levels of negative thoughts, and in relation to that, that's very innocent. Then you have people who just really go kind of lose their mind, and such people end up in jail, criminal activity and so on. So yeah, that's all there. Sometimes so many thoughts will go through our mind. And therefore, it's necessary to be a Goswami, one who controls we control our mind. So vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, adurapasta vegam, etan vegam, yovishaheta dira, sarvam apimam prativim shashishyat. That there's urges of the body, mind, anger, all the different urges of the body, speech. So it's necessary that we learn how to control our senses. And how do we control our senses? We engage them in Krishna's service fully. And gradually the senses become purified, including the mind. So it's a gradual purification of our senses, including our mind. And in the meantime, if we feel we're not fully purified, which even if we are fully purified, we don't feel we're fully purified. But if we're not purified to the degree we think we should be or that we want to be, we have to be tolerant. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinada pisini chena tarora pisihishna amanina manidena kirtane sadahari. One should be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, ready to offer all respects to others in such a state, and also not desiring any respect. Such a state, one could chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So sometimes we think in relation to tolerance, we think about, yes, we have to tolerate others. Sometimes we have to tolerate our spouse or children or boss or different people. But we could also look at it in terms of tolerating our own consciousness, our own mind. That we may not think is very Krishna conscious. We have to tolerate that. And in a sense, we could see that that's like a reaction, having particular desires, particular mind that may not be. That's not fully Krishna conscious, or that's not fully spiritualized, that has so many material leanings. It's a reaction for our past activities in this life and other lives. And Lord Brahma says that in the 10th canto, he also mentions that one has to tolerate the sinful reactions of their past, while simultaneously bowing down with great affection and devotion and offering one's self, body, mind, and words with great humility to Krishna. And such a person becomes an inheritor of the kingdom of God. It becomes a rightful claim. So, yeah, we have to be tolerant. That's there. And another thing to consider is that the 5th canto mentions that a yogi may be able to control their senses and their mind, but they should always be very vigilant. Sometimes they say the price of freedom is vigilance. Be very conscientious, very conscious of of our desires, of our mind. Do not give it too much freedom. And the examples given that a yogi may capture their mind, which is considered to be like a wild animal. But if that yogi is not careful and the animal is released or let out, then that yogi can be killed by that animal. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that even great personalities, we see this sometimes in the Bhagavatam and other places, they have their problems. So, and then Srila Prabhupada would kind of joke, what to speak of us? So, I mean, he would joke, but in a serious way. What to speak of us? So we have to understand that until we're fully liberated, yeah, we have to be very careful in relation to our minds. And therefore, constant acts of austerity, of sacrifice, of charity, of Krishna consciousness, sadhana bhakti is very important. Regulated, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, to chant Hare Krishna every day, to do these things every day. This will give us the spiritual strength gradually that is necessary to control our mind. And in this way, direct our energy in a positive way towards service of Krishna. So those are some thoughts. There's so many different ways to answer that, but that's some thoughts I had. I hope that helps to some degree.
Thank you, Balaram Prabhu. I have a follow-up question. If other devotees doesn't have a question, I'll ask, but I'll wait for others. Thank you.
Do any other devotees have questions or comments?
Well, Dr. Madhava, it looks like
You can ask.
the mic is back in your arena.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu, for helping me answering that question. Especially you mentioned about humility and tolerance, right? Yes. And usually in the path of bhakti, and I've listened to one lecture where uh, we are an average of whom we associate with, right? In the path of bhakti, we are repeatedly taught about humility and tolerance. And ultimately, the same character continues with whomever we deal it. Like, especially this particular verse talks about Uttama and Adama. Okay. I mean, we are an average of that. Like, ultimately, we take that character wherever and whomever we interact with. Ultimately, that might not work with in our professional career, right? Like, I can't be tolerant every time, or I can't be humble at my workplace. And that what I mean to say is, I can't be humble to get my work done from my colleague or my subordinate, or like I can't be humble and tolerant with my manager. Like at times I might need to be tough, right? So if I need to ask a question about how can I balance between the characteristics or qualities what I'm learning on the path of bhakti, and make sure that simultaneously I can maintain that balance in my professional career.
Well, yeah, it's in relation to our dealings in this world, whether it be career or I guess in this particular case, we're speaking about career. But throughout our life, there may be different situations in which we can't be humble or we can't be tolerant exactly. We have to use some other way to get our message across, in a sense. Like, for example, you have the short story of Narada Muni. Narada Muni, he creates so many disciples throughout the universe, and all different types of, Prahlad Maharaj, and you have Dhruva Maharaj, and you have so many different personalities found in the scripture. But one time he really initiated a snake, and the snake, before he was a devotee, he's very fearful. I mean, he was very, people were scared. But after he became a devotee, all these kids, they started throwing rocks at him, rocks, and he came back all bruised up to Narada Muni, and Narada Muni said, "Oh, what happened?" And the snake said, "Well, I became a devotee, so now I'm nonviolent. So now these people are taking advantage of me. So they threw rocks at me." And Narada Muni said, "Oh, no, no." He said, "This isn't good." He said, "All right, fine. You may not bite them. You know, before you were a devotee, you used to bite. Okay, fine. That's what snakes would do. But now you're a devotee, you want to be nonviolent, understood. But at least you could act like you're going to bite them. You don't actually bite them. You just, it's a fear tactic, you know, to protect your self-defense. So yes, in certain circumstances, it may not work, you know, being humble or yeah, being humble, for example, that may not work in a sense. We might have to generally when people think of humility, they don't think of someone being angry. But there's a way to be humble and angry at the same time. That's there, but uh, so yeah, we have to engage different tactics depending on the different situations we're in. Like devotees may not be very aggressive in general, or certain devotees may not be very aggressive, but when they go out to the streets of New York to distribute books, they have to be aggressive. I mean, or else you're not, it's going to be very difficult to stop someone. You know, people are very passionate. So, like Srila Prabhupada would say, there's a saying, a lion in the chase means when you're outside of the house here, it's like, you know, you have to put out a lot of energy and it may be like warrior energy or may not exactly be seen as like humble or tolerant. You have to, you know, you're dealing in this material world. But then he said, like a lion in chase and like a lamb at home, you know, very gentle, very calm. So yeah, we use these different things, these different abilities we have in Krishna's service. And that takes some intelligence to understand, is it time to use this particular ability or should I not? So this is the dynamic of that parents have too. Am I supposed to be very tolerant here? Am I supposed to be very humble here? Am I supposed to be very soft and compassionate as generally understood? Or do I need to be more, do I need to discipline, you know, the child more in relation to maybe setting certain boundaries and correction and chastising. So yeah, it takes some intelligence to figure out when to use these different abilities. And as Srila Prabhupada said one time, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So in other words, make so many mistakes, and that translates into experience. And then due to all that experience, then you have good judgment, what works in certain situations. And of course, there's the principle of sadhu sangha, trying to get advice from sadhus, how to best utilize different abilities. All right, those are some thoughts.
Thank you, Balaram Prabhu. I understood the need for tactics. It's not about the survival, ultimately a tool for thriving. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Balaram Prabhu. Any other questions or comments?
Thanks, Prabhu. Appreciate hearing your class.
Yes, thank you.
On the show.
Jai.
Okay, Prabhuji.
All Nitai ki jai. You got a lot of Nitais going on, huh? You have Bala Nitai, got Jai Nitai. Balaram Hoilo Nitai. Balaram became Nitai.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for taking time to speak on this verse and answering Vilakdamadha's question very thoughtfully. So we'll see everybody today at 11:30. Not everybody, whoever can come. 11:30 at the temple for Sunday feast. His Holiness Bhaktivinoda Tirth Maharaj will be giving a lecture. So please join if you can, in person or virtually through our YouTube channel. Panchakalpatrubhischa kriposandabhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Thank you again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna.